Coles and Woolworths have long been rivals in Australia's $70 billion food and grocery market. Over the years, new entrants have tried to give them a run for their money, but they remain firmly entrenched as market leaders. With us today, we have Morningstar Head of Equity Research, Peter Warnes, with us to discuss where the two retail giants are headed. Peter, welcome.
Thank you, Vicki.
When Wesfarmers bought Coles nearly 2 years ago, its food and liquor business was lagging that of its main rival, Woolworths. How is Coles traveling these days? Is it still playing catch-up?
Well, Vicki, catch-up's an interesting phrase. Yes, they were behind the leader, Woolworths, and by a comfortable margin, but the Australian food and liquor segment is really a pretty healthy duopoly. Metcash and Aldi are very, very robust competitors, but at the edges, and Woolworths and Coles really dominate that space. Now, Coles, prior to Wesfarmers making the acquisition, were underinvested. They didn't have management that really had a lot of retail experience, and it could be said that was mismanaged to some extent. So the people at Wesfarmers that have made that major decision to buy Coles are now putting in place a very, very experienced, albeit international, food and liquor management team, and gradually that will change the culture of the business, and that's where you've got to start. If you're going to play catch-up, you've got to get it right at the top. And so they are putting in place the right management. They're starting to change the culture, and so we believe that over the longer term, this will transform into a better performance.
So what is Coles' priority in terms of improving its business? Is it market share?
Well, the priority at this stage is not so much to increase market share. I mean, as I say, that the two share about 75% of this Australian food and liquor market. It really is about trying to maintain reasonable growth, top-line growth, but more importantly, at this point in time, to try to improve the margin on the sales they are currently generating.
Is that set of priorities set to change anytime soon, or is that going to be Coles' focus for, say, the medium term?
What will happen is the priorities will change as they move towards this goal of turning this battleship around, if you like. Initially, what you'll do is you'll change the management, you'll put the right management in place, then you'll change the culture, then you'll start improving your supply chain. And really, the improvement in the supply chain is where you start in the early part of a whole transformation of this magnitude.
Looking at both Coles and Woolworths now, they both seem to put a lot of emphasis on their fresh food aisles. Why is that, Peter?
The business, the Australian supermarket business has evolved quite substantially over the last 15, 20 years. If those people who are old enough go back and have a look at their traditional Woolworths or Coles supermarkets in the late 1980s, they wouldn't recognise them now. And what Coles and Woolworths have a clear lead here in being the fresh food people and really are pushing that fresh offer. The fresh offer is a very, very big magnet. I mean, you can really do creative things with the display of fresh. It's very hard to make a box of Kellogg's cornflakes look attractive, if you like.
Looking purely at Woolworths now, we've seen them add electronics and petrol to their stable of retail offerings over the years. Would you be expecting them to add any other type of retail, or would you expect them to expand geographically?
Yes, they've got other operations outside Australian food and liquor, but when you look at it, that is the business. Australian food and liquor generates about 60 to 65% of group sales, but it throws in over 85% or almost 85% of group EBIT. You could argue that the general merchandise and consumer electronics operations are a bit of a distraction because the margins that they're getting on those particular operations at this point in time are significantly lower than they're getting on food and liquor, so why bother? But I suspect that Australia's getting to a saturation point. It may well be an acknowledgement that they just can't aggressively expand anymore physically, but what Woolworths are doing is there's a major refurbishment program. Again, making the shopping environment more attractive, driving more sales per square metre, and that's the secret.
Peter, thank you.
Thanks, Vicky.